So Iran put a genuine peace offer on the table. Open the Strait of Hormuz, end the war, lift the blockade. The only condition: delay nuclear talks until after the shooting stops. It landed in Washington on Monday. By Wednesday, Trump had rejected it. And within hours of that rejection, Brent crude oil hit $118 a barrel. And as of this morning, it has now surged past $126, the highest price of this entire war. I want you to understand what $126 a barrel means in real terms. That is $4.23 at the pump on average across America right now, the highest national average in nearly 4 years. That is diesel prices spiking, which means every truck that delivers your groceries costs more to run, which means your food bill goes up. That is jet fuel so expensive that airlines are cancelling routes. That is heating oil, fertilizer, plastics, everything made from or moved by oil going up simultaneously. Iran offered to end that this week, and Trump said no. This is the Hormuz Files. And today, we are going to tell you exactly why he said no, and what every serious analyst on Earth thinks happens next. Let me be precise about what Iran put on the table, because the way it has been reported in mainstream media as a vague diplomatic overture undersells how significant this actually was. Iran gave the US a new proposal to reopen the Strait of Hormuz and end the war, with nuclear negotiations postponed for a later stage, according to a US official and 2 sources with knowledge of the matter. That is Axios, one of the most reliable Washington outlets, with 3 separate sourced confirmations. The proposal was conveyed through mediators in Pakistan to break a stalemate with Washington. It calls for extending the ceasefire so the parties can work toward a permanent end to the fighting. Nuclear talks would come later, only after the US blockade is lifted. Think about what that actually means in practical terms. The Strait of Hormuz, through which 20% of the world's oil flowed before this war, reopens. The blockade that is costing American consumers at the pump every single day lifts. The war that has killed nearly 3,400 Iranians and 32 Americans pauses permanently. The one thing it does not do: immediately address Iran's nuclear program. Iran's foreign minister, Abbas Araghchi, spent the weekend doing something that tells you everything about how seriously Tehran is taking this moment. He flew to Pakistan, then Oman. Then he was heading to Moscow to meet Vladimir Putin directly. Putin praised the Iranian people for bravely fighting for their sovereignty and vowed to do everything possible to bring peace to the Middle East. Iran is building a diplomatic coalition. It is not acting like a country in a state of collapse. And there is something else buried in the Axios reporting that I think is the most important detail of this entire week. Araghchi made it clear to the Pakistani, Egyptian, Turkish, and Qatari mediators that there is no consensus inside the Iranian leadership about how to address US demands on nuclear issues. Iran's own negotiators are telling the mediators, "We cannot agree to nuclear limits right now because we do not have internal agreement on what to offer." That is not weakness, that is honesty. And it is the kind of honesty that, in any functioning diplomatic process, would be met with patience and an extended timeline. Instead, it was met with Trump cancelling the talks entirely and demanding Iran call Washington on the phone. So why did Trump say no? He gave several answers this week, and I want to go through each one because they reveal something important about where this war actually stands. Answer 1. The nuclear red line. Trump told Axios on Wednesday in a phone interview, and I'm reading this exactly, "The blockade is somewhat more effective than the bombing. They are choking like a stuffed pig, and it is going to be worse for them. They can't have a nuclear weapon." Choking like a stuffed pig. That is the President of the United States describing the economic strangulation of 90 million people. And his core argument is this: If America lifts the blockade without first getting nuclear concessions, it loses its primary leverage. The moment the strait reopens and the blockade ends, Iran's economy starts recovering. And a recovering Iran has far less incentive to negotiate on nuclear terms than a strangled one. That is a strategically coherent argument. I want to be honest about that. It is not irrational on its face. Answer 2. The Cry Uncle Declaration. In the Oval Office on Tuesday, in front of cameras, Trump said this: "Now they have to cry uncle. That's all they have to do. Just say, 'We give up, we give up.' But their economy is really in trouble. It's a dead economy." Now here is the problem with that answer. And it is a problem that every single analyst on our panel has identified from day one. Iran does not cry uncle. It never has. The Islamic Republic has survived, and I want you to hear these words carefully. The Iran-Iraq War, which killed over 1 million people, 30 years of escalating US sanctions, the assassination of its top military commander, Qasem Soleimani, the killing of its supreme leader in the opening strikes of this war, 60 days of the most intense bombing campaign since World War II, the closure of its own strait, and now a naval blockade. A government that has survived all of that does not say, "We give up," because oil is expensive. Answer 3, and this one Trump posted on Truth Social Wednesday morning. Iran can't get their act together. They don't know how to sign a non-nuclear deal. They better get smart soon. No more Mr. Nice Guy. No more Mr. Nice Guy. After 60 days of bombing and blockade, I will leave that without further comment. Let me give you the numbers this week, because they are telling a story that the official statements are not. Brent crude topped $118 a barrel on Wednesday after Trump confirmed the blockade stays until nuclear terms are agreed. US West Texas Intermediate futures hit $106. And this morning, as of right now, Brent crude crossed $126 a barrel after reports that the US military is preparing to brief Trump on potential action against Iran. Goldman Sachs estimates that exports through the Hormuz choke point have fallen to just 4% of normal levels. 4%. Before this war, it was 100%. And Goldman is warning that oil could spike toward $140 to $150 a barrel if disruptions persist, though elevated prices would eventually curb demand. Meanwhile, the Pentagon this week made its first ever public accounting of the war's cost. The comptroller told Congress, "At this day, we're spending about $25 billion on Operation Epic Fury. Most of that is in munitions. $25 billion in 61 days, mostly munitions, which tracks directly with what we showed you last episode. 50% of THAAD interceptors gone, 50% of Patriots gone, 45% of precision strike missiles expended. And CENTCOM confirmed this week that the blockade has turned back 42 ships. There are 41 tankers sitting idle with 69 million barrels of oil that Iran cannot sell. That's an estimated $6 billion plus in revenue Iran cannot access. That sounds like pressure. Until you do the other side of the maths. The World Bank's chief economist said this week that the war is hitting the global economy in cumulative waves. First, through higher energy prices, then higher food prices, then higher inflation, which pushes up interest rates and makes debt more expensive. The poorest people, who spend the highest share of their income on food and fuels, will be hit hardest. Iran is losing $6 billion in blocked oil revenue. The world is losing trillions in economic damage. America is spending $25 billion and counting. Somebody somewhere needs to ask, at what point does the cost of maintaining this blockade exceed the cost of the compromise that was just offered and rejected? Let me bring every voice on the Hormuz Files to this moment, because this rejected peace offer is exactly the scenario they have all been describing from different angles since episode 1. Professor Mearsheimer called this war irrational from the start, built on a theory of victory that was never achievable. And what does the rejected peace offer tell us about that theory? Iran offered to open the strait, the thing that started this war. Iran offered to end the fighting. Iran offered to lift mutual restrictions. The one thing it would not do immediately was surrender its nuclear program, a program its supreme leader has called a religious red line. Mearsheimer has been saying from the beginning, you cannot bomb a country into abandoning what it considers a matter of national survival and religious principle. The rejected deal just proved his point. Scott Ritter said on day 3 that the regime change operation had failed. Iran is now pursuing its own diplomatic agenda, flying its foreign minister to Pakistan, Oman, and Moscow simultaneously, while telling the US to call them if it wants to talk. That is not the diplomatic posture of a defeated country. That is the diplomatic posture of a country that believes time is on its side. Professor Jiang said in 2024 that Iran's strategy would be deliberate attrition, exhaust American political will, drain American financial resources, and force a position shift. Look at what happened this week. Iran offered a deal that stops the economic bleeding for the whole world, except the nuclear issue. Trump rejected it. Oil hit $126. Gas is $4.23 a gallon. Republicans are reportedly spooked about the midterms. That is attrition working in real time. George Galloway has been asking from day one, why would Iran agree to nuclear limits under military threat when it can simply wait? This week gave us the answer. It won't. And Professor Marandi, speaking from inside Tehran, has been consistent throughout. Iran does not negotiate from weakness. It negotiates from a position it has carefully constructed. And this week, with 3 aircraft carriers opposite it and a blockade running and oil at here is where this stands as of today, April 30th, 2026, day 61 of this war. Iran made the most significant peace offer of the entire conflict this week. Reopen the strait, end the war, lift the blockade, delay nuclear talks. Trump rejected it. Oil is at $126 a barrel and rising. The US military is reportedly preparing to brief Trump on potential new action against Iran. The ceasefire is technically holding, but practically meaningless. The blockade continues. The strait is still closed. Ships are still being turned back. And Iran's foreign minister is in Moscow building a diplomatic coalition, while Trump posts "No more Mr. Nice Guy" at 6 a.m. Here is the question that I think matters more than any other right now, and I'm going to ask it as plainly as I can. What exactly is America waiting for? Iran has offered to open the strait. Iran has offered to end the war. Iran has offered to lift mutual restrictions. The one thing it will not do right now under military threat, with a hidden supreme leader and fractured internal leadership, is surrender its nuclear program. Is that realistic to demand? Is that achievable through a blockade? Or is America now in a position where it cannot accept the available deal without looking like it lost, and cannot escalate further without triggering consequences that nobody in Washington wants to describe out loud? Mearsheimer called it. The US has failed in the Iran war. The rejected peace offer and $126 oil is what that failure looks like in practice. The Hormuz Files will be here for every development, every decision, every consequence. Subscribe if you haven't. Share this with someone suffering at the pump. And tell me in the comments, should Trump have taken Iran's peace offer? Yes or no? Just that. I want to see where our audience stands. I read them all. I'll see you in the next file.